πάροχος της καστοριάς ράβουσε τα μαλλιά του σαν ήρθανε τα ανταρκτικά στην περιφέρεια του σαν ήρθανε τα ανταρκτικά.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Odysseus here, future Odysseus, your nephew, your comrade. And I wanted to break in here at the beginning of the episode to talk to you about recent development since we recorded the episode, shortly after, as a matter of fact. There was a ceasefire announced, tenuous ceasefire announced between all parties. Iran, Israel, and the U.S. How long that holds remains to be seen. Of course, Israel continues attacking Gaza, but for the moment, that is where we're at. I just wanted to add that in, a little update. All right, enjoy the episode. See you on the other end.
You're gonna wear a hat. You and George. What's his name on Mother of All talk shows? George. What the hell's his name? George. Oh, come on.
Orwell.
No. George.
I'm joining the colonialists. I can sense a winning battle or losing one.
I think here we are. George. George Galloway. You and George Galloway. He always wears a hat.
Does he? Does he wear a hat or does he wear a pith helmet?
No, he always wears a hat. I think because he was attacked and he's left scarred. I think that's why he does it.
Oh, that's right. Galloway. Oh, I love that guy. Yeah, he's awesome.
He's pretty good. He's a little too Christian for me. I'm sorry, but he's a good.
No.
But and when he starts talking about, well, actually, all these guys, this is a bit of a problem. They start talking about woke. It's like, oh, please, just stop.
Yeah,
just stop.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's not perfect on everything, but it's like allies on some of the important stuff.
Yes. Now you're out of focus again. Is it now? Now you're back in focus. So it must just be that when you start moving, your camera loses it a little bit. No,
it's being cranky lately. I don't know what's going on. Let me have an idea. How about that? Nope.
No, I mean, you're back in focus.
We'll get it eventually here. There we go.
Okay.
Good enough.
Yeah, I think so.
It's fitting with the ADD, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I suppose I should say welcome to Comrade Uncle. I'm here. My name is Odysseus, and I'm here with my uncle.
I'm the uncle.
He's the uncle, Dr. Lyoun.
Always good to be with you, Odie.
Oh,
and by the way,
so good to see you.
It would be Odysseus. It shouldn't be Odysseus. I mean, that's the English pronunciation. It's actually Odysseus.
Yeah, Odysseus Ladopoulos. Yeah,
that's right. Named after that guy who was in a boat for a long time, and he found
some guy,
and he named it. And what did he call himself when he was in the giants that had only one eye? He called himself
Utis.
No man.
Utis. Yeah.
No man, right? Is that Utis?
No man. I'm no one. Utis, yeah.
Utis, right.
Yeah.
That's right. Utis. That's right. Utis, right. So you could be no man, or you could be Odysseus. One of the two.
Yeah. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Your grandfather used to talk like that.
Oh, did he?
My dad.
Nice.
That's what he would do.
Nice.
You can call me this. You can call me that. Just don't call me late for dinner. It's got to be a World War II Depression era.
It certainly
something
is.
that those guys did. I have no earthly idea.
Oh, I love that guy.
So he's long dead. Whatever. We all die.
We all do. Rest at last, huh? So, we wanted to talk about a couple of things today. Let's see. We've got some good news. We got some bad news. We got lots of bad news. We got, but we do have some good news.
Well, there's actually some, I think, horrific news. And just for the people who do listen to us, there are analysts much more well read and thoughtful than certainly than me. I'm thinking of, as we just mentioned a minute ago, George Galloway. I'm
Mhm.
thinking of Nima. I've forgotten Nima's last name on Dialogue Works. I'm thinking of Electronic Intifada. Actually, I'm thinking of
Sure.
Danny Haifong. Um,
I don't
uh,
know if I know him.
oh, he's good. India and Global Left. These are all podcasts. Of course, Chris
Mm.
Hedges. And one
Mhm.
that surprises me over and over and over is Judge Napolitano, who I
Yeah.
always thought of as a pretty right-wing guy, libertarian kind of guy. But
Right.
he has some just remarkable guests. And in terms of, and it matters for what we're going to talk about today, because in terms of analytics, I think, in terms of world situation, these guys are good. One of the things I've noticed that happens
Mm.
over and over with all of them, and no disrespect to any of them, they're again smart guys, is they seem to miss the boat domestically. And what I mean by that is they will, of
I
course,
agree.
what's happened here is that Israel perpetrated a sneak attack on Iran, I believe it's 4 or 5 days ago, while the United States,
Unprovoked.
unprovoked, while the United States was stating, it occurred on Friday night, and the U.S. and Iran were supposed to talk again on Sunday. That would have been Sunday. That's a week ago. Gosh, that would have been Sunday last. So we're talking way more days. We're talking over a week now. Sorry.
Mm.
And there was analysis of this. And then last night, the United States, after Trump said, well, I'll make some decision in a couple of weeks what I want to do, after his director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard,
Mhm.
stated that the consensus of the intelligence community was that Iran simply was not working on a nuclear weapon. They just weren't.
Yeah.
So Trump said, well, I don't care what she says. I think they are, but I'll make a decision in 2 weeks. And then last night, he sent several B-2 bombers and attempted to bomb 3 nuclear sites. Well, actually did bomb 3 nuclear sites
Supposedly.
in Iran. Well, no, I've seen the holes from pictures. How much damage is actually done is, of course, unclear. The Iranians say no,
No, I
but
mean
they're
supposedly nuclear sites, not supposedly bombed. That certainly
oh
bombed.
yeah. Well,
Supposedly nuclear sites.
these were
Maybe.
from the information that is
Uh-huh.
released. They were
Yeah.
nuclear sites. They had been
Mm.
emptied out several days in advance.
Right.
So that's, but the point though, my point
Mm.
is not exactly that. Of course, it is that, and we need to talk about that briefly. But
Mm.
the real point I want to make is that in the analysis of what Trump had done by supporting Israel's war of aggression, as well as Israel's genocide, which, by the way, it's not just Trump, it's Biden, and before Biden, it was Trump, and before Trump, it was Obama, that
Hmm.
that basically
Yep.
was perpetrating these illegal acts that were using drones to kill people extrajudicially and so forth. But
Yeah.
but in continuing that, some of these guys, and I'm thinking of on Danny Haifong's program this morning, and on Nima's discussion works, or whatever it's called. Um,
Mm.
they said, we thought that Trump was, I'm paraphrasing, a man of peace. We thought he was something somehow better than this. And I
That's certainly how he
and
pitched himself. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it is, but
Mhm.
it seems to me that the only way you could say things like that is if you've completely ignored what he's been doing domestically. I mean, I think that he is a fascist leaning, I would call him a fascist definitionally, uh, individual surrounded by definitional fascists in his cabinet, incompetence as well as fascist.
They do seem
And
to
I'm
go
not.
together.
Well, no. You can be quite
Sometimes.
competent in this, right?
Sure.
But in this case, he has chosen people who are ideologically, and again, I'm not just throwing the word around. It is definitional. One can look this up.
Mhm.
Fascist, and their competence level, whether it's RFK or Hegseth or anybody in between, including the little twit 22-year-old who's in charge of terrorism response.
Oh yeah.
What was his last job at Lowe's Hardware or something? I don't know. Anyway,
Not that there's anything wrong with people who work at hardware stores, but I mean, like, yeah, no, that's You could
No,
be you
no,
could
I'm
be not
sorry.
a monster.
No, 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 no. This
I
is not a
I
slam at hardware store workers. This is a slam at incredibly incompetent dipshits being placed in positions of importance where they have
yeah.
no competence. That's
Yeah.
the key. The key is that boy has no competence. And do I
Sure.
think Iran's going to perpetrate terrorism on us? Frankly, I don't. I think the
Oh.
U.S. and Israel are the biggest terrorist
Mm.
um, powers on earth. But the only
Mm.
point I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit
I'm sidetracking you.
you're sidetracking me. I'm getting the only point is that these guys would make those comments about Trump. We thought he was a man of peace. We thought he was
Mm.
somewhat different. We thought he wanted to focus on America. I mean, you can only say things like that if you've ignored what he's done since he's come to power. And what he's done since he's come to power, both um, kind of operationally and in terms of bills that he's wanted to pass, have been nothing short of horrific. So if you start with the guy's appointees, RFK Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services, I mean, we are facing it may not happen for a while, but we are facing a potential for the next pandemic that'll hit us where we will not be
Mm.
able to respond when the next wave of COVID hits us, which, by the way, has already appears to be, based on data, has
Mhm.
already slammed or beginning to slam China. We are
Mhm.
not going to be prepared. These guys are
Yeah.
talking about not having vaccines. They're making proclamations. The one that came out recently that RFK Jr. said was from the CDC. The CDC had nothing to say about this. It was RFK that said it, which was pregnant women
Mm.
do not need to be immunized. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which in the past was asked to weigh in on this as well as CDC, said unequivocally that's wrong. That's just wrong. Women who are pregnant are at increased risk, and their children, once born, are at increased risk if the mother doesn't have immunity to COVID, because a good
Mm.
swath of the neonates' immunity comes from their mom. That's why one of the reasons breastfeeding is so important, of course. But we are going to be ill prepared for this, and it's whether it's him or whether it's the Secretary of Education, right, or
Right.
I mean, it is truly breathtaking. And there's a couple of interesting articles which I think we should include in this month's podcast appended to them. One is this article by lead author is Reichman on
Mm.
allogeneic stem cell transplant that literally, now, well, I'm going to overstate it slightly, that literally cures type 1 diabetes mellitus.
It's pretty
Basically,
incredible.
it's way incredible. Now, this is just a safety and efficacy study. There's only a total of, I believe, 14 patients. It's very small.
Mhm.
But the article is worth looking at. And again, we will include it, I think, at the end here. But because what these authors have done is take work that was, it's not work that was basically clearly funded. And the reason I'm hesitating is I'm just trying to think
Mhm.
sort of how far back to go. I worked for years. I worked in the lab, and I had a research lab. It was not ultimately successful, but that's okay. It was science, doesn't matter. But I worked
Yeah.
with a remarkably smart guy, a guy named Ammon, Ammon Peck,
Mhm.
Peck, at the University of Florida. He still is at UF. He still is an immunologist, and he was doing work at the time different from the work I was trying to do, that looked at stimulating stem cells to become islet cells to cure diabetes. And for a short time, actually, he thought he had the answer. He
Hmm.
succeeded, and then it was like, and then he lost it. Then he just like it was gone. He couldn't make it work anymore. And it's one of the things that happens in science. But that's probably 20 years ago. All of his work was NIH funded. He
Mhm.
did form a company, and there was some
Right.
people that invested, but that company's now gone. But all of his work was NIH, or National Science Foundation, but basically federally funded work. As I expect was this work of Reichman's that's
Hmm.
recently come out. And the reason I want to mention that, the reason it's important to mention that, is because what we have today, and again, this touches on the issue, I believe, um, of what I would call, what I would like to call, it will not make sense initially, but of one big union, the Wobblies, one big union, international workers of the world, viewed all workers as workers. Didn't matter whether you were physicians, your brain, your intellectual workers. If you work in a steel factory, you work with your hands as well as your head. They viewed it as everybody as one big union. Of course, they were destroyed. But the reason I mentioned them, sort of in a parenthetic way, is that because what we are facing is an administration that takes how many hundreds of millions of dollars, $400 million from Harvard. I don't remember how many hundreds of millions from Columbia and other universities. And what those monies are research monies. That's what these are. That's what these are. They've slashed research funding, and the work that we are referring to today that may actually cure type 1 diabetes. Now, again, this is a safety and efficacy study. That's all it is. There's only 14 patients, but it looks like this works. So of course you need to do now bigger studies. It will not be inexpensive because you have to stay on immune suppressants, probably for your life if you're going to be on this. But again,
interesting.
When I say it won't be inexpensive, I'm actually specifically referring to big pharma, who will take these findings that are funded by us, the people of the United States, and they will commercialize them, and they'll try and make a lot of bucks. This should not be. This should not be. What should be is that we help fund and finance this basic research. Something good comes out of it, and we should be able to sort of reap those benefits without going bankrupt, as well as if there's got to be pharmaceutical companies, that's fine. Make a fair profit. We can talk about how to define that. But it will be expensive, and it shouldn't be. But part of the expense is also going to be because people who get these islet cell transplants, again, assuming this actually works, and it does look like it will work, because they have to be on immunosuppressants for the rest of their lives. But it is remarkable work that's only possible because 20, 30, 40 years ago, people at the National Institutes of Health, the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease, and on and on and on and on, National Science Foundation funded basic work about how do you take blood cells and separate those blood cells into stem cells and other cells. Stem cells which are cells that can become anything. And then how do you turn those stem cells on specifically to make bone, to make islet cells in the pancreas, and on and on and on. That work is slow, expensive, multiple false leads before you get there. My professor and colleague, a guy who I think very highly of, Dr. Peck, was on his way until he hit a dead end, and it all blew, and then he couldn't do it anymore. Somebody else picked up and found a different way to do it. But it's all expensive, it needs to be funded, it's federal funding, and that's what Trump and his foolish minions have slashed. And the reason that matters is because one of the few things that actually works in our United States today, our infrastructure is a mess, transport's a mess, education is a mess. We have been defunded, unfunded, underfunded for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
But one of the things that actually did, at least until recently, work was biomedical science. I mean, there are flaws, don't misunderstand me. I know you and I have discussed this previously. The health system is an unmitigated disaster. I am part of that unmitigated disaster. I've been involved in it for 45 years. But as I stated, I think to you, the first political debate I had as a 21-year-old undergraduate at UC San Diego was with a young man who was a member of the Young Americans for Freedom, a right-wing Republican group at the time. They're probably moderate now, but they were the extreme right at the time. And the debate was on the American health system. He took the position that this is the best system in the world, the best time in the world. And I said, even then, as a 21-year-old, I said, oh my God, you are wrong, and this is why. And 50 years later, I'm still having the same debate. It's the same debate. We've gone nowhere but essentially backwards for decades and
Right.
decades and decades. They are slashing the funds that could make this system, at least research-wise, better and improved.
hmm
They are, in addition, with their whatever that bill is called, it's such an idiotic name, big beautiful bill, whatever that stupid name is, to cut
Yeah, that's it.
Medicare and Medicaid, right? Medicaid, which
Yeah.
is a state, federal, dual financed medical program that funds children, that funds dialysis
Yeah.
for children, that funds medical care for children, that funds nursing homes for old people who are poor. They want to slash that, and they want to slash it. They want to slash it. They want to slash it. So these, forgive me, these motherfuckers can get a tax cut. These motherfuckers who are
Yeah.
so greedy,
Yeah.
enough is never enough. They need a couple more
No.
yachts, a couple more airplanes.
Yeah.
Y ahora el pueblo que se alza en la lucha con voz de gigante gritando adelante. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
And that's what they're doing at the same time that we are increasing our spending on so-called defense, well over $1 trillion now. And at the same time that we are now involved, not just as if this wasn't bad enough, of course, not just that we're involved, involved with Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. It is genocide. Anybody who doubts that simply needs to go to every human rights organization in the world of any substance, including, by the way, B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, whom I have nothing but respect for.
Yeah. Or
And they
go
have-
on freaking, go on Instagram. You can literally watch it.
No, of course, but I'm not talking
Agreed.
about that because people
I know
say,
what you
well,
mean.
it's just AI. No, it's not just AI. No, it is not. But
No.
but not only are we complicit in assisting in the perpetration of genocide,
Yeah.
we have now become complicit in and active participants in illegal war of aggression. Now, that war of aggression is against Iran, which we may have and we do have our disagreements with. And if you want to understand why there may be disagreements, all you have to do is go study the history and you will see why they exist. Why do they chant death to America? I just can't imagine. But it might have something to do with overthrowing their government that was democratically elected and then putting the Shah in, who was a butcher. It might have something to do with our assassinating their scientists and their politicians. Be that as it may. Okay, we've got some disagreements with them. That's why you talk. You and I don't talk because we have to come to agreement. We talk because we talk. But when you have an enemy, purported or otherwise, you talk to sort of solve issues. What we've done, along with the Israelis, is we have now begun another illegal war of aggression, right? Which is, if you remember the Nuremberg trials, aggressive wars are the crime of crimes, the crime from which everything else stems. When we did this in Iran, actually we did it in Vietnam. Forgive me, we did it in Iraq. We did it in Vietnam,
yeah.
and now we're doing,
Korea.
more than one. But we're doing it again. And so when, again, this is many, 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 many words to say, when the guys, the analysts, who, again, they're all smarter than me, they're all better read than me, when they talk about Trump and say, but we thought he was somehow different, it's as if they've not paid attention to what he does here at home. And maybe they don't have the bandwidth to do it. I don't know. But they're all good, smart guys. But what he's doing here to us, and that ranges everything from his so-called big beautiful bill, Medicare, Medicaid, the appointees that he's got, both from the Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, to what he's trying to do and has done, him and his ilk have done, to women and their ability to control their bodies. It's beyond criminal. So it should come as no surprise that what he's done is get us involved in an illegal war of aggression, which is not going to end well. And And, just before, not just before, years before World War II started, it became evident that the League of Nations had become nothing, not even a debating society. It was useless. And
Hmm.
what Trump, but also before Trump, Biden, Trump, Obama have done, what we have done is make the United Nations essentially irrelevant. Now,
Yeah.
Gutierrez, the Secretary General of the UN, has not come out strongly against what the United States and Israel have done, not in the slightest. So some of the blame is theirs as well. But we've made the United Nations irrelevant. We've made, by these acts, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, right?
Yeah.
The Non-Proliferation Treaty, which for those who don't know it, you can look it up. It's pretty straightforward. But basically, it was signed, I want to say 3-4 decades ago, maybe longer, that basically said countries have the right to use nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. You sign this, you can have it for your power stations, you can have it for whatever you want, but you can't make weapons. And you got to promise, and there's inspections and so forth. Iran signed it. Iran has allowed
Hmm.
very, very robust inspections.
Yep.
Israel and Iran has no nuclear weapons.
And they were complying. Yeah.
And they were complying. They were complying. They were complying. They were complying when they signed the JCPOA, Obama's treaty. They were complying when Trump tore it up. They were complying even after he tore it up. They were going to comply. They were trying to make a deal with Trump when they were attacked.
Yeah.
So
And let's not forget, Biden could have signed back on and chose not to. He
chose not to. He chose not to. That's right.
It is
That's right.
truly, I mean, I think that there's some, they were just casting about looking for the next war in some ways. And I don't know.
I do not cut Biden any slack on that.
Yeah.
On that account, no matter what you say about the guy, no matter what people want to say about the guy, I cut him no slack, and nor do I cut him any slack on the genocide that continues to be perpetrated on the people of Palestine and Gaza. But we have basically dealt death knells. Not again. This is not just Trump. This is over the last, I'd say, decade and a half, something like that. Death knell to the United Nations and to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and although it may be an exaggeration, I worry that my outlook is so bleak I could exaggerate a little bit here. I believe we are seeing the beginning of World War III. I mean, World War, right? We are now there are genocides occurring, not just in Gaza, but also in Sudan, and I think in Congo still as well. There are wiser, there are wars, serious wars going on in Ukraine, as well as now between Iran and Israel and us and the Palestinians. Although what's happening to the Palestinians is hardly a war; it's a genocide. We are on the cusp of the abyss. All it will, and both the Pakistanis, again, don't know how much credence to put in what they've said, but they have said we will give Iran nuclear weapons if you guys continue this. The Chinese and the Russians are not going to, I don't think, stand by and watch Iran be decimated. Iran has said, we don't need your help now. Don't need anything. It's all good. From my understanding, they've said, we're still good. And they do seem to be handing Israel quite a beating.
Yeah.
The best. I mean, I want to emphasize, we've said this before. You and I have both said this before.
Sure.
They're, as socialists, I believe in the concept of redemption, not religious, but political. That we can be mistaken, we can make terrible mistakes, and we can still come back from that and be significant, productive, good human beings. So I don't want to see any Israeli young man or young woman or anybody, old man or woman, die needlessly. I don't. Nor do I, of course, want to see any Palestinian, whether they're a fighter or a civilian. I don't. I want us to be able to figure out a way to live together in a world that works. That's what socialism is.
Yeah.
But when you're being attacked, when a genocide is being perpetrated, I think there are times you simply have to fight back. And so the Iranians are indeed giving as good as they get to the Israelis. And they've said, from my understanding of the talking heads again, who are the analysts, they've said we don't need help Russia, we don't need help China, we don't need any of this stuff right now. But it will not take an awful lot, I think, uh, to see this degenerate into a world war. And and what might that look like? I mean, what that might look like is the Iranians continuing to hit Israel, and Israel deciding they need to use a nuclear weapon. And
Yeah.
then we are toast. And it's
Well and
and
truly screwed. Yeah.
and none of this needs to happen. None of this
No.
needs to happen.
No.
So again, 30 minutes talking now about
Yeah.
why we think this is what's happening and why we think
Mhm.
it's happening. And I think part of the issue is that the guys who keep saying I expected more from Trump, I think they didn't and don't and probably never understood the kind of man that this man is.
I mean, yeah.
There's
Look. I mean, there's some like, in all fairness, during and I mean, far be it from me to be too fair to the guy, but in his first term, he didn't really. I mean, maybe he tried to start a war with Iran, but he didn't. He was not as bellicose as. I mean, he
he
technically
killed
didn't start any war. Yeah,
he killed Soleimani.
yes,
That
yeah,
after
was
Soleimani went to
incredibly provocative. Yeah, yeah,
Iraq to make
yeah,
peace, right? So
right.
that was a potential cause for
Yeah.
war.
I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but
Sure, 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 sure.
I can see why you would get the idea maybe that because he does use that rhetoric, but like you say, you're not wrong. I mean, yeah, he is he's when it comes right down to it with Trump, he's just he governs. He might say this or that or the other, but he just governs like a neocon. Whenever they tell him to do jerk his chain or whatever, or I mean, maybe he doesn't even care. Maybe it is not even. It's just he'll say whatever the hell, and then regardless, for whatever reason, he just does govern exactly like a neocon.
Well, I
And
mean, I have to admit, I do read his tweets. So I have to take a shower
mm.
after every time I read one of them, I must admit. But I do read them. And it does seem like he just, whatever pops into his,
Yeah.
treponema
One
pallidum
second.
addled brain, if you get my drift there, um, uh,
Yes.
it comes out in Truth Social in his tweets. I mean, it's pretty pathetic. The
Yeah.
stuff that he put out after attacking Iran was just an embarrassment. So, I mean,
Yeah.
worse than an embarrassment. So,
Yeah.
but the several points that I mean I think would matter. I mean, I don't know,
Mm.
is number one. We just talked about an article that's been published with materials and with real science, funded by the
Mhm.
people of the United States of America,
Mhm.
that could end type 1 diabetes as we know it. Could. There may be a problem. It may not work, but it looks like it does work. You need bigger studies
Mhm.
now. But I mean, this is only possible if you fund research. Research is only possible in research universities. Research universities are where people like me spent almost 30 years at University of Florida, a pretty big deal research university, talk and argue and think and you know have ideas that people didn't have before that allow you to
Mhm.
make advances. And if you police that the way Trump is trying to police it, the way the university leaders are trying to police it, including, by the way, the leadership of the University of Florida now, and other universities, Columbia, for
Yeah.
one, you will destroy yourselves. You will destroy what works in our university system.
Yeah.
I mean, and Trump and his national funding agencies, institutes, national institutes of health, are destroying what works. That's one. And two, we haven't touched on too much the whole measles problem, which
Ah,
is
yes.
still a huge problem. It's now, the last time we talked, there were, I think we said 400 or 500 cases. I don't remember. And they were pretty much Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Well, it's now in 39 states. There's something like 1,400. There's been 1,400 cases. There have been 12% of these cases, 100 and some, hospitalized, and there's 3 deaths. I mean, utterly preventable. utterly preventable with vaccine.
Yeah.
But what has HHS lead Kennedy and the people around him done? They've minimized, they've poo-pooed, they've said these vaccines are dangerous. Don't do them.
Yeah.
I mean, what they are
Total
doing is
junk science.
it's junk science.
It's not even science.
So
Yeah.
it's not
Mhm.
even science. They're
Yeah.
dragging us to war, destroying what works. And as we look around at our country, including at the, I think, and I know I've made this point before. I don't mean to totally repeat myself over and over, but including the people who voted for Trump, our working class, who have been utterly and continue to be utterly betrayed by the
Yeah.
Democratic Party.
Yeah.
You say, but you look around and you see this and you say, what are we going to do? What can we do? My fear now is that given the events internationally, that we are in just going to be, if we're not already, in a world of hurt, that this could explode in ways that are not just metaphorical. And it is terribly concerning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have been led to this. Again, I want to emphasize, I detest Trump. I think he's worse than slime. It's an insult to slime to call him slime.
Yeah,
He
that's the
is,
problem. Yeah.
he is, as some people say, he is a poor man's idea of what a rich man is like. But it's not just Trump. It is all the people around him. And it's the people who came before him, they might have been slicker or spoke or written better than he does,
Yeah.
but they didn't change anything. And that frankly, after Jimmy Carter forward, and that includes people on whose campaigns I worked, my
Mhm.
wife worked, that are just nothing but disappointments.
I
So
mean,
we
look,
are, I think,
even Jimmy Carter, it's like, we talk about the origins of the conflict with Iran. I mean, he didn't do anything better with Iran. He certainly was,
no,
involved
no.
in a great deal of fuckery, and it's not, I mean, which isn't to say he hasn't said good things since and yada yada, but it's like the machinery of empire has not been dismantled by any president, barring
Not
maybe
even the
maybe
attempt.
Lincoln. Yeah.
Not even the attempt.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Lincoln. I mean,
Yeah,
Lincoln
maybe
did
Lincoln.
argue that
Yeah.
the Mexican War, the war that the United States perpetrated on Mexico to take Arizona, California, and New Mexico, and so forth,
Mhm.
was wrong. I mean, he did say
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
all those years ago. He
Yeah.
didn't give it back, but he did say that. So, no. So, but
Yeah.
in our sort of more modern era, really,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, all we
Certainly
have
in our more
seen
modern, yeah.
is betrayal of the
Yeah.
U.S. working class by the Democratic Party, which was once, at least to some extent, to the
Mm.
greater extent or lesser extent, uh, the party of the working class. Certainly under FDR it was.
Mm.
Maybe under Truman, but but the loss of our ability to form unions, strong unions that were on the streets,
Yeah.
has been part of the reason why time after time our people get bamboozled into wars that are wars against people they have nothing against, should have nothing against.
Mhm.
That while their own standards of living simply deteriorate, not just standards of living. I mean, part of the disgrace for our country is that the lifespan of men and women across the board has decreased by something on
Mhm.
the order of 3 years, I believe. It's over the last 4 or 5 years. It's down by 2 or 3 years. It's
Yeah,
dramatic.
right.
We have really fallen off the curve, really
Yeah.
fallen. And you just don't see that except in societies that are collapsing. And
Right.
while it may not look like, I mean, I look out the window, it looks the same. I mean, it looks sort of the same to me. It may not feel that way. I think the reality is we are collapsing.
Yeah.
And and unless there's some political movement, and the No Kings marches that's maybe a start, but it's not enough. You need organizing. You need to be able
Mm.
to look at the big picture. It's not just Trump. The problem with the No Kings movement is too much of it is it's all Trump, but it's not all Trump.
No. Yeah.
Trump continues to perpetrate a genocide that Biden allowed to start and refused to stop.
Right.
You know, things that Obama did with the extrajudicial murders of people who were not American citizens, that
Yeah.
he refused to stop. I mean, and on and on and on. So
Yeah.
it's much bigger than one individual, and we don't have the machinery in place, I think, for
Yeah.
those of us who consider ourselves workers. I mean, I may be a physician, but
Huh.
the capital I have is here. Other than that, I got nothing, man. That's all there is.
Right.
We don't have the tools. We don't have the organizations. We do have the tools. We don't have the organization to help
Yeah.
us solve this problem, and that's a huge issue. And then on top of all
Yeah.
of that, as if that weren't enough, genocide, the threat of World War III, is there's the climate
Climate
emergency,
change.
which is being utterly ignored. Utterly
Yeah.
ignored.
Yeah. No, and they tie together too. I mean, this sort
Yeah.
of the bombing places. War is just a tremendous contributor to carbon emissions. It wreaks havoc on the environment. This is not. It's like it's all part of the same struggle. I mean, you cannot fight climate change without fighting endless warfare. The forever war. It's just there. It's part and parcel. It'd be like recycling, but burning coal, or
Right.
whatever. It's like
Right.
you can't. They're tied together. Yeah. It's,
We can't order other countries to do anything. We can enter into agreements, which we have, and then we've broken left and right, the Paris climate agreements.
yeah.
But we can do what we can do, and
Mm.
the technology does exist to salvage the one planet that we have. And
Yeah.
as much as Elon Musk and the people who think he's such a smart guy may talk about going to Mars or somewhere, who the hell knows? This is the only planet we've got. We're not going anywhere. So we have to do everything we can to salvage this, to save our planet, to make it livable for me, but I'm going to be dead in 20 years, for you, for your kids, for our grandkids, our great grandkids.
Mm.
And war has no place in that.
No.
Cooperation has every place in that. And
Mm.
the elimination of fossil fuels is incredibly important. Now, they may not be totally eliminated, but for the most part, we could do that today.
We could.
We just won't. We won't.
Mhm.
And by the way, just to make it clear, Trump's big, beautiful bill, whatever that idiotic thing is called,
Big beautiful bullshit.
yeah,
Big bucket of bullshit.
it's what it is. It eliminates the tax rebates for solar,
Yeah.
and it continues, as I understand it, the rebates for fossil fuels
Yeah.
that the big oil companies get. It's just, and it does a whole bunch of other terrible things, including
Yeah.
limit the judicial review of presidential decisions. I mean, just pathetic stuff. It does attempt
Yeah.
to destroy with the pathetic remnants of this democratic experiment, which,
Yeah.
I think is worth trying to save.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid, and of course, this is why we wanted to have this,
Uh-huh.
do this podcast now, which we
Mhm.
really need.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to give you grief. I know you do all the things you have to do, but it needs to come out. It needs to come out. This is
Oh, yeah.
we are in deep, deep trouble. Deep,
Yeah.
deep trouble.
Yeah.
And illegal wars of aggression, I can think of nothing worse. Except what's worse is potentially our
Nuclear
soldiers,
war.
sailors, airmen, Marines will be thrust into battles that simply are going to waste their lives. Full stop.
I get like alerts for stuff anyway. I noticed on the March 30th, I believe it was, they mobilized just from Wisconsin, they mobilized 600 National Guardsmen and sent them to CENTCOM, which is the basically, cut a long story short, it could be a few different places, but it's the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
so it's like, they're preparing for this stuff. I mean, it's it is it's in the books, it seems like.
It's in the
I hope
and
not.
and
I hope not.
and I hope not. And while this is ongoing, we have Homeland Security, a term I just can't bear to say,
Yeah.
sending men, I think they're all men, dressed in civilian clothes with their faces covered, no badges, no warrants, no
Yeah.
identification, pulling people off the street into cars that, at least if the clips I've seen are to be believed, cars with license plates that they change at their whim.
Yeah.
Are these Ku Klux Klanners? Are these 3%ers? Are these Proud Boys? Are these criminals? Are these gangs? Are these federal agents? Are these, who are they? One
Brown
would never
shirts.
know. Are these, well, that for sure. At least that for
They
sure.
literally are wearing brown shirts, actually.
They
Yeah.
they have vests that you or I can
Yeah.
buy, bulletproof vests that
Yeah.
say police, but that's all.
Uh,
And then,
uh,
so when we were at our neighborhood organization meeting here
uh,
in Gainesville, there was a police lieutenant present. These happen twice a year, and the
mhm,
police always come, to talk about neighborhood safety, and it's fun.
mhm,
This is Gainesville, and so I went up to the police lieutenant and I said, I need to ask you a
mhm,
question, but before I ask you the question, I need to make a comment first because I don't want you to get the wrong impression.
hmm,
I said, when I was for 15 years the medical director of Gainesville Fire Rescue Service, we created, for the Gainesville Police Department, we created a group called the SWAT Medic Team, which is a group of medics that would go when the police rapid response team would go, and what they used to do is they would be a mile away,
mhm,
staged, waiting to be called in when it was all safe, and then but if someone got hurt, just the time between getting there and saving that person could be lost, the time you need. So
hmm,
we trained up with the police asked us
hmm,
to do this, and we did it. We trained up a group of medics, paramedics,
mhm.
who would literally go in with the cops. They wouldn't do cop things, but they were right there. If somebody got
Yeah.
hurt, a cop, a citizen, a whomever, it didn't matter. The idea
Mhm.
was we take care of everybody. We
Right.
want, to save life. So I said this to him. I said, I'm saying this to you only I don't want you to think I'm, genetically anti-police. I said, but what is the position of Gainesville Police Department if ICE comes to town and starts arresting people at Lowe's Hardware? I mean, are you going to help them, or are you, do we call you? And he said two things. One, he said, we've gotten no direction from the chief of police on this. That's number one. But the second thing is if you see guys with guns, no uniforms, pulling people off the street, you call 911 and we will respond. We'll
Hmm.
come. If it turns out they're really cops, well, I guess won't do anything. But
Interesting.
we will come. So, again, one has to have faith in the police in order to do that, and I'm not sure I do. Even though, again, in Gainesville we have a pretty decent group, I think.
Mhm.
But it is, this is, and of course, so why, you might not, you wouldn't say, but somebody listening might say, well, what do I care? I mean, if they're illegal, whatever. First of all,
Mm.
there's no such thing as an illegal human. There are people who have come
Also,
here who don't have papers,
secondly,
and they
fuck
have.
you. Sorry.
Secondly,
Yeah,
also true,
no,
also
go
true,
ahead. Go ahead.
also true, but also people who are
No.
in the process of attempting to
Mhm.
become papered, if you will.
Yeah.
And ICE has come and they've gone to the courts and just pulled them after and taken them and tossed them out of the country. Furthermore, there are people who are here with green cards, legally
Yeah.
here, that they've arrested. And there's a handful of citizens of the
American
United States
citizens. Yeah.
that they've arrested because they look too brown.
Can you
Walking while
imagine?
brown, living while brown. So that's why it matters, because these are literally, I think, the beginnings of our own brown shirt / Gestapo
Yeah.
thugs, that if they're not stopped legally,
Right.
we will have nothing but trouble. So there's a host of issues, and on this I'm
Yeah.
going to have to stop because I've got another appointment. I'm sorry to say, but I did want this to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
always good.
this needs. I mean, the people who listen to this need to think seriously about this. This is all of a piece. I don't think you can be no kings, I'm against Trump, and say, but I want to wipe out the Palestinians, or let's go to war with
Yeah.
Iran. This is
Right.
all of a
Or
piece. This is,
or that they're an acceptable loss. That that it's somehow
that they're
less evil, or
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll take that because I'll get this. No, that
Right.
was the rationale for bringing up the IWW, International Workers of the
Mhm.
World, one big union. We are one big world. And
Yes.
yes, we got to have rules. You got to follow the rules. But
Sure.
we're the ones not following the rules. We are
Right.
the ones not following the rules.
Yeah.
And that's what's so frightening, because not only do we not follow the rules, but we've got a significant number of massively powerful weapons that I'm afraid will be used,
Yeah.
that are being used.
Yeah.
So more on this
Yeah.
to come.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So you've got 4 or 3 articles to include on this with this
Yep. Yep.
append to this.
I'll
You've got
add
the
them to
opening
the.
music and the closing music and that piece that I sent you that you need
You
to
got
put
it.
in somewhere. It's a beautiful piece.
Yes.
El Pueblo Unido.
Yes.
Somewhere in this mix. Okay.
Hell yeah. That sounds
Okay.
good. All right.
Okay.
I love you,
Till
man.
next time. Take care.
Sounds
Love you,
good.
man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. That's it. If you're on YouTube, give us a little like and subscribe. If you're listening on audio, uh, give us a nice little review on whatever your podcasting app is. We'd very much appreciate it. Share it with your friends. I wanted to say a couple words, wrapping up. Look, we're facing, right, potentially World War III. It's pretty fucking bleak, right? That's a lot of heavy news. Places that the U.S. has no business attacking, along with Israel. It is, pretty fucked up. But I don't want you to lose hope. And I want to leave you with some thoughts I had. Um, mm, you know, we are in a tough spot. There's no doubt about that. But it's and while it is in some ways historically unprecedented, it is it isn't exactly the first time that humanity has been in this kind of bind, and even more so than humanity, the left, broadly speaking. And I know maybe not all of you out there consider yourselves leftists. I think we probably maybe appeal to that section of the political compass, but I know not exclusively. Um, so I mean, regardless, the people who don't want to see the world lit on fire and turn to a frickin' cinder, or be invading places, broadly anti-imperialist, whatever, however you want to put it. This isn't the first time we've been in a tough spot. So part of why I bring that up is because I had a funny experience last weekend, I think, something like that. I went to see this play. It was called, let's see, Fallen Angels. And I'm sitting here watching this, and the kind of folks that go to plays probably skew liberal. Certainly you've got the money to go to a play, so that's something. I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, but probably middle class, upper middle class, maybe more, and probably liberal, for the most part. I'm sure there's some leftists. I'm sure there's all kinds of people. Well, anyway, what was the play about? The play was about this sort of wealthy people in London who, they have all these sort of whimsical, this, everybody, the one person thinks they're cheating on the other one, and, and they're going back and forth and getting drunk, and it's just, it's kind of the silly, I think it would be described as a romp. And in the background there's a maid, and the maid is made out to be more talented than but she's in the background, right? And I was thinking about this, like 1925 in London. What else was going on in 1925 in London? Uh, huh. Truly pretty horrific British imperial system that was, exploiting people, right next door in Ireland, and abroad all over the world. They were, and these, it was like kind of like a ha 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 funny, like the the bosses of the servant, would refuse to call her by her name, and it's just like I kept kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, um, and for them to be like, turn it on its head and be like, actually, this is a critique of class, and like these silly silly bullshit that these people are preoccupied with, uh, is in fact, made out to be, meaningless ultimately, and like the whatever, but no, in fact, it was just a thing. It was just kind of nothing. It ended, and that was it. It was just about these people, and there was a sort of critique of, I guess, gender politics, uh, and that's part of what made it interesting to me. While gender was addressed, class was most certainly not. Uh, Now, let me read to you and I swear this is going somewhere. May sound like a strange aside, but I have a point. So, this guy, Noel Coward, wrote Fallen Angels in 1925 I'm going to give you the blurb, during a period of social transition in Britain, especially for women. The interwar years saw women gaining more rights, entering public life in new ways, and beginning to question the boundaries of marriage, propriety, and domestic expectation. While the surface of society remained polished, the foundations were shifting. Coward readily seized on this shift, and through his plays, stories, and songs, displayed a keen sense of what audiences wanted to hear. This part's important. A keen sense of what audiences wanted to hear, and an even keener sense for what they were afraid to say out loud. Uh, you know, this was his sole attempt at genuine farce. Blah blah blah. Now, why am I bringing that up in relation to our current moment? So, at this time, there's sort of a reassessing of cultural stuff. Gender is being, gender roles are being questioned, and what does this guy do? Right, he knows his audience. He shows a slice of kind of the equivalent of pretty wealthy liberals, and he's got this funny play for them, and they love it, and as I was sitting there, the people around me were like, they loved it. They thought it was just real funny, and maybe any sort of critique of it that could be had uh was lost on them. Now, why does that relate to our current moment? It's because I was sitting there, right, surrounded by uh these, liberals, and they're all laughing at uh, this play set in a time when, that focuses on these people, reassessing gender roles and stuff, during a time when the British Empire is just doing brutal shit, truly just massacring people, committing genocides, brutally oppressing folks. And at the same time, these guys are having this sort of whimsical romp, and the audience loves it. And the audience now loved it, while there is war and genocide and all this horrible stuff, and it doesn't have a class critique, right? It's just like silly, and the servant blends into the background. Mm. So, now, why does that relate, and why does that give me hope of all things? That seems like it's fucking discouraging, right? Well, at the same time as that was happening in Britain, uh, and at the same time as the British Empire was doing, horrible shit all all over the globe, they were also incredible movements, nascent movements of liberatory struggle. I mean, from Vietnam to the Soviet Union to all over, there was all these fights. There was, in fact, a great reason for hope, and the British Empire did fall, right? They're sort of still around as a shadow of themselves, but they did fall. So why that gave me hope is, even though the situation was bleak then, and the people watching the play then, and the people who the play was written about, were all, sort of self-obsessed people at the core of empire. You know, there were still things going on in the world that would shake the foundations of capital, that would destroy empires. So, that gives me some measure of hope in that sort of way. I mean, maybe it's weird, but it does give me some hope. And that's, I think there's great possibilities, even when it seems bleak, even when it seems like empire is ascendant, even when the ruling class is on top and they're just punching us in the face over and over. There's often more hope than it seems like. Lenin once said that he didn't think change was going to come in his lifetime. Then the Russian Revolution happened. I don't know where we're going next. And I don't know where to look for the sort of the details of hope. I mean, I know the broad outlines, resistance movements, but the rise of a multipolar world. Those are all something. But I do know that in times past, when things looked hopeless, there was in fact hope out there. And I think that it's true now that there is hope. Maybe it didn't seem like it if you were an Irish person that happened to be at this play, watching this farcical, whimsical bullshit, and seeing all the people laugh at it. Maybe it would have been easy to feel hopeless. I mean, it took a long time, generations, from that moment for Ireland to achieve independence. But people didn't give up, and that's why we shouldn't give up. Because even in the darkest moments, we keep fighting because we owe it to the future. And because we owe it to the past as well. They didn't give up on us. We shouldn't give up on them. They fought and lived and died to try and change the world for the better. The least we can do is keep that fight going. So, keep the hope alive, my friends. I do believe that we will overcome. And the path to that liberation, that glorious day of liberation, lies through internationalism, solidarity, and the fight for equal rights and justice for all. So, keep the fight alive, comrades. Odysseus out.
potente, furia la bufera, scarpe rotte, pur bisogna andare a conquistare la rossa primavera, dove sorge il sol dell'avvenir. A conquistare la rossa primavera, dove sorge il sol dell'avvenir. Ogni contrada è patria del ribelle, ogni donna lui dona un sospiro. Nella notte lo guidano le stelle, forte il cuore, il braccio nel colpir. Nella notte lo guidano le stelle, forte il cuore, il braccio nel colpir. Se ci coglie la crudele morte, dura vendetta sarà del partigiano. Ormai sicura è la dura sorte del fascista vile traditore. Ormai sicura è la dura sorte del fascista vile traditore.